Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, May 26th. There's about 450 albums total. I got 14 on my list today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlists that we put together every week, and also the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's about 450 albums coming out this week. I'm going to talk about 14 of them, so if there's something I don't talk about on the show today, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, they'll all be available online. I'll put links below down in the show notes if you want to pick them up online. The first one on my list is a huge album, one I've wanted for years and years. It first came out back in 1989. I don't think it's been reissued since then. It's been super hard to find. Whenever you do find it, it goes for several $100s. And I just wasn't willing to pay that kind of money for that album. But it is a great album, one that I've already got on pre-order. This is Prince, Batman. Of course, it was the soundtrack to the 1989 film Batman. And it's a great album. I think it's definitely one of Prince's best 80s albums and one I've loved for a long time. It was a hugely successful album when it came out. Sold over 3 million copies. This is going to run you, it's a lot of money though. It's going to run you about $58 online. So it's pushing $60, which I know is a lot for a release, but if you do look around, there are some deals to find for this album. I actually pre-ordered it through Merch Bar. They had it on sale for $42, so there are deals to get that album if you want to pick it up. So you got that one coming out this week, which, like I said, I'm really excited for that one. And then you've got Matchbox 20, Where the Light Goes. This is their new album. It's their 5th studio album. It's the first release since 2012. It's going to run you about $22 online. And they released a single off here, Wild Dogs. I actually thought it was a pretty okay release. Nothing was like mind-blowing. It sounds like Matchbox 20, which I guess is a good thing. They're one of those bands where I have their debut album. I've got their greatest hits collection. It's probably all I need, but I'll at least stream this new album and check it out. Jim Blossoms are reissuing Mixed Reality this week. First came out back in 2018. It was their 6th studio album. It's on blue and orange splatter vinyl. I saw the mock-up online. It actually looks pretty cool. It's running about $30. So the track Here Again, which I think was the big single off the album, I think it was the only track I've ever heard of it. Off of it, and I thought it was an okay track. Jim Blossoms are one of those bands, kind of along the lines of Matchbox 20, where I love the early stuff, the first couple of albums. Everything since then is just kind of okay for me, at least of the stuff I've heard. So I definitely need to go back and at least restream that album or stream it again and check it out. The next release is one that I already have on vinyl. So I'm kind of up in the air on whether or not I'll pick up this release. I probably will just because of how much I love this album. But this is Thelonious Monk with John Coltrane. It's going about $34 online, which I don't think is a bad price for a lot of those jazz releases. This was first released back in 1961. I don't know why I was going to say 2000. 1961 it was released. This is actually part of the Kraft Original Jazz Classic series that they're doing. It was the second release from it. The first release came out a few weeks ago. It was that Miles Davis release. I love this album. One of the greatest jazz albums of all time. Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane are probably 2 of my top 5 favorite jazz musicians. As far as like this album goes, though, even though this is a really great jazz album, I actually prefer the live album that they did together, the Carnegie Hall, that back in the early 2000s, like 2004, 2005, the Carnegie Hall release finally was released. It had been lost for decades and decades, and no one knew if the tapes actually really existed for that recording or not. But it was all remastered, put together. I actually love that Carnegie Hall release is probably my favorite jazz recording. But this one with John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk is just behind it. It is a great jazz release. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's definitely one worth checking out. Aerosmith has 4 big reissues coming out this week. And a couple of these are really kind of under the radar albums that, if you're unfamiliar with, they're, I think, some of the most underrated stuff that Aerosmith ever released. The first one, this is Get Your Wings, first released back in 1974. It was their 2nd studio album. It's running about $30 online. All 4 of them are right around $30. So this is newly remastered from the original analog tapes. Same old song and dance is the huge track off of here. And it's one that, if that's the only track you know off of this album, Get Your Wings is definitely an album to kind of go back and rediscover, I think, because it's some of the early period of Aerosmith is some of the, I think, in my opinion, the best stuff that they ever did. And this is one that I think is kind of gets lost between some of the other earlier releases from their catalog. So you got that one coming out. You've also got Toys in the Attic, which is I think the one big Aerosmith release that probably everyone has in their collection. Released back in '75, it was their third studio album. This is also newly remastered. Sweet Emotion, Walk This Way were the two big tracks on there, and this is Toys in the Attic was my first. So I guess I really wasn't my first Aerosmith album. Pump was my first Aerosmith album, but then I shortly afterwards I picked up Toys in the Attic and fell in love with that album. Fell in love with that really early period from Aerosmith. But both those albums are great. Aerosmith is also reissuing Rocks this week. This was first released back in 1976. It was their fourth studio album. It was a huge album when it came out. It went quadruple platinum. When Rolling Stone magazine did their top 500 albums of all time back in 2020, Rocks was actually listed at 366. It's a great album. Back in the Saddle was the huge hit off of that one. So that's definitely a great one to grab. It's also, like the other ones, it's also newly remastered from the original analog tapes. And then the last one on the list, in my opinion, is probably the most underrated Aerosmith album. There's off the top of my head, I don't think there was any big hits off of this one, but from beginning to end, it's just a solid album. Not a bad track on it. This is Night in the Ruts, first released back in 1979. It was their sixth studio album. Like I said, it's just a really solid album from Aerosmith. There is a Yardbirds cover on there. I don't remember I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it is a great track. Probably my favorite track on that album. You got a big music on vinyl reissue coming out this week. This is Silverchair Diorama, first released back in 2002. It's their fourth studio album. It's going to be on purple vinyl. It's going to run you about $40 online. It's limited to 3,000 copies. Like I said, every time I talk about these music on vinyl releases, at least for the first run of them, seem to be pretty limited. They can be kind of hard to get at times. I've actually gotten to the point now where if I really want a music on vinyl release, they come out of Europe, so I've been pre-ordering them from Europe. They take a little bit longer to get over here, but generally I'm assured to get a copy of it. I actually have this on pre-order already, so I'm looking forward to that release. You've also got Stone Temple Pilots Purple being reissued this week. This is released back in 1994 as their second studio album. It's going to be on clear vinyl. Going to run you $24 online. So this is part of Atlantic Records' 75th anniversary series that they're doing. I'm not sure any of the other releases that they've released so far of this. At least off the top of my head. I know I've talked about at least one or two of them on the Tuesday release shows, but off the top of my head, I can't remember any of the other ones. But this is a reissue of the 2019 remaster, which I actually already have a copy of the 2019 remaster, so I'll pass on this one. But if you don't, this is one of those albums that, as much as I love Core, I think Purple is a better album. So the next two albums are both metal albums, but they're vastly different kinds of metal. The first one, this is Dangerous Toys' Greatest Tricks. If you're unfamiliar with Dangerous Toys, they're one of those kind of glam metal bands from the late 80s, early part of the 90s. This was first released back in 2020. It's on purple vinyl. It's going to run you $28 online. So this is Greatest Tricks is a compilation of live tracks from throughout their career and a selection of songs from the last studio album, which came out back in, I think it was 1995 when their last album came out. So, like I said, $28. Dangerous Toys, to be honest, I really don't like their first album. So outside of that, I can kind of do without. But I don't know, maybe I'll kind of go back and stream that one and check it out because I'm unfamiliar with any of the live stuff that they've got on this album. And then the second one is Metal Church, Congregation of Annihilation. This is the new album for Metal Church. This is the first album since their lead singer Mark Howe died back in, I think it was July of 21 when he died. And it's their 13th studio album. It's going to run you about $28 online. So so they replaced Mike Howe with Mark Lopez. And, I'm not sure how this is going to sound. I'm unfamiliar really with Mark Lopez's earlier stuff or stuff he's done with. He's been in a couple of bands before, but I don't remember the names of them off the top of my head. But, I was never a huge Metal Church fan to begin with. But, I'll at least stream this one and check it out. The next one's a really interesting release. If you're a punk fan, you might know who this band is, but if not, definitely go back and check them out. I've seen them live a couple of times. they're just fantastic, a fantastic band. But this is Teenage Bottlerocket, So Dumb, So Stoked. This is a new EP. It's a 7-inch. It's going to run you about $20 online. So you got the two title tracks, which are So Dumb and So Stoked. They're both written by the band during lockdowns in 2020, largely about kind of what they were seeing in society out there. So you got those 2 tracks on there. It also has 2 other tracks on there, It Wasn't Enough and Heart Attack, kind of round out this EP. But those 4 tracks, I'm really interested in seeing and picking this up and listening to these tracks, because I really do love a lot of the stuff from Teenage Bottlerocket, and they're a hugely, hugely underrated punk band. And then last on the list today, you got a reissue coming out of Big Star, #1 record. First came out back in 1972. It was their debut album. This is going to be on metallic gold vinyl. It's running about $33 online. This is part of the RSD Essential series that they've been doing over the last, year or two. A bunch of great stuff that has come out through this series. So this was mastered by Jeff Powell from the original Analog Tapes. It's one of the most influential 70s rock albums. And it's one of those albums where I kind of have to be honest and say I've just never listened to it. I know a bunch of people out there love this album, love Big Star, and for one reason, it's not like I don't like the kind of rock music from the 70s. It's just one of those albums that kind of slipped through the cracks for me, and I've just never listened to it. But a lot of people love this album, and I'm sure this is going to fly off the shelves. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Like I said, it's going to be a great week, I think, for music. Some really big releases. Definitely looking forward to that Prince Batman release. I'll stream the new Matchbox 20 album. I'm kind of on the fence on that Thelonious Monk John Coltrane album. I probably will end up picking it up. And then a couple of those Aerosmith releases I don't have, so I'll probably grab those also. But drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. Like I said, a bunch of great stuff. This is another second week in a row we've had a big series of releases. Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.